So today we're going to learn how to use something called Kinesio tape. This tape was invented by a Japanese guy. It's designed to mimic human skin. How I employ it in singing work is to look at old injuries and see if I can get them in a place where they're affecting me less. We're going to talk about scars today. So any scar in your body you want to think of as an area of prolonged threat. Basically, your brain's still aware that there was an injury there, even if the tissue has healed. So we want to look at it in a way of seeing how to work with that scar and seeing if we can find a direction that's helpful for it, and then we're going to tape it in that direction. So I have a scar right here that we're going to use for this video. I was working in Canada a few years ago and I got up in the middle of the night to pee and I walked into a wall right here. It was not comfortable, 3 a.m., bleeding down my face there, not the best. So we're going to use that scar and see if I have a good direction to move it in. The first step is just to put my hand on it. So some of these scars, if they're like fresher injuries or were very serious, they're not going to respond well to being touched. Here's how we're going to know if it's good for us or not. We're going to use range of motion. I'm going to use, for the purposes of this video, my head rotation, but you can use anything. You could do like a forward bend, you could do a rotation in your body, you could do shoulder flexion, which is arm up like that, you could do abduction, which is bringing the arm up towards your ear like that. Any motion that you can do at home is absolutely fine to check this with, as long as you can assess how you're doing with it. So I'm going to turn my head so you guys can see. I'm going to turn to my right. That's where my range is. Look at it one more time. Now I'm going to put my hand on my scar. If my range of motion gets worse, if I touch here and then it goes like, I can only go that far, that's a bad sign. My body is not ready to have that scar moved around, so I just need to give it some space at that point. Maybe some very light sensory work, like I could lightly brush it like this to try to get my body more comfy with it, but I don't want to be pushing on it too hard. Let's see what happens with me. So my hand's going to go on there and I'm going to rotate one more time. So I actually went a little further when I touched it, which means that my body's definitely ready to have this scar moved a little bit. So now that my hand's on it, I'm going to move it in compass points. I'm going to move it up, down, and side to side. Each one of these I'm going to check my range of motion and see if I have one that's good. So I'm going to start by pulling it down. That would be this way for me. I'm just tractioning very lightly. I'm not pressing hard. Just trying to move the skin and maybe a little bit of the layer right below that. It's not a lot of pressure. Traction down when I turn. So that was definitely worse. I didn't go as far as I did before, so that's not a good direction for me. Let me try pulling it out. So that was a little better, on the right track. Let me try pushing it in. Definitely worse, like I can barely turn it at all like that. Let me try pulling it up. And that also was better. So I either need to go out or go up. I'm gonna do them one more time and see if I can figure it out. Let me go out first. And that actually was pretty good. I'm going to pull it up. And that also was pretty good. So if I find two directions that are pretty good, I can split the difference, go up and out. Let's see what that feels like and looks like. And that was my best. That got me the furthest. So I'm going to now tape myself in that direction. So when you're using this tape, it's really best to have these kinds of scissors. These are carbon plated. This stuff has adhesive on it that's very sticky, so normal scissors kind of get all gummed up in it. So I think if you're going to use it, it's actually worth it to get these. I'm going to cut a little bit of the corners off of this. So I'm doing this to make sure that it doesn't get caught on anything, especially if you're going to tape stuff that is covered by clothing. You want to make sure there's no sharp edges, so you want that kind of a shape so that it's going to stay on. The thing about this tape that's interesting is that it can stay on for several days. Showering's fine with it. If it starts to get ragged, obviously you replace it. But if you found a good taping for yourself, you can just leave it on. So this is how you do it. You're gonna pull half of the tape off. So it's gonna be like pulling a little bit of it away from the paper. And then we're gonna anchor it onto wherever the scar is. So I'm gonna find mine right now. I'm gonna try to go on the angle that I just figured out. So it's gonna go right onto the scar right there. I'm gonna use a little friction to put it down like that. The heat from my finger seals it, keeps it on, and then I'm going to pull it up like this while I roll it on that way. And now I'm again using my fingers, friction and heat to seal it on. So now I can feel my skin being pulled that way. I'm gonna turn my head. So if this gets worse, like if I can only go that far, I didn't tape it correctly. So let's see how I did. So that was much better. So I got even further than I did with my finger doing that. So I can leave this tape on. It's kind of a cool fashion accessory that I can have on my eyebrow. Any scar in the body works like this. So anytime you've had surgery, you've had a broken bone, you've had any kind of serious injury, it's worth playing around with these elements because sometimes that's stopping me from being able to feel my breath, being able to open my voice up. These are just old injuries that haven't quite been resolved. And so we want to use stuff like our fingers, our movement of the scar, and our tape to teach our body that it's safe to move on and to open back up.